Hey YouTube, Sam here. Well, with the turd again, and yet again it's being a turd. Go check out my video. I have an alternator video on how to test if your alternator's working or not. Probably not the best video I ever put out, but it's informational and it'll kind of give you the background of what's going on here. But for now, I'm going for the alternator, and there seems to be two schools of thought on what I've looked at as far as things on videos. I'm going to actually go read my book a little bit and see what my book says to do. But I do know one way is down through here. I'm on the passenger side of the car. You'd normally have a cover going over the motor right here. That cover is removed. But if you go down through here, and actually most people are bringing it back through here, so it looks like you got to remove a lot of stuff to do that. But anyway, down here under there's a plastic cover right here, is on the back bottom side of the motor is where your alternator is. It's a part that you have to replace if you own the car for more than a few years anyway. I can't believe they put it where they did, to be honest. Cars are getting ridiculous. This is my last Ford I'm ever going to buy as far as cars that are 2000 and above, and it might be one of my last 2000 and above cars I buy, unless I'm absolutely forced to buy something newer, because it's ridiculous. But neither here nor there. And then other people say, and yet we're on the passenger side again, that you got to take this tire off, pull the axle, some other parts and pieces, and go down through here to get it, and it still seems like a pain in the butt to monkey out of there. So right now I'm going to start with the top and work my way down to here. Like I said, I have a feeling just to get to some of the wires and the bolts and things like that, we're going to have to go through the wheel well anyway, so there's a good chance we'll be doing that as well. The first thing we're going to do here is actually disconnect the negative battery cable. Almost forgot again. I'm really bad about that. Something I really need to start working on. I always figure it out before I start working on the car, but I get halfway to where I want to be and then have to get up and do that. So, do that. We're under the passenger side in the wheel well here, as my heat kicks on. And according to the book, you got to do all I said about taking the axle and stuff like that. I still haven't decided. In the book, sometimes mechanics do it a certain way for a certain reason, and it's not always necessary to do it that way. But usually they're probably right. Anyhow, but first step is taking this shield off here. It's just a rock guard, and it's got, I believe, 7 bolts and 1 plastic clip, and the plastic clip is down. It actually goes right here. I popped that loose, and I popped all the rest of the bolts loose, and they're 10mm bolts. There's 2 up under the wheel well here, and all the rest are down below. They were all real easy to get out, not a big deal, so I would suggest removing them. Some people take these things and bend the crap out of them and bend them out of their way, but you know, to each his own. I prefer just to get things out of my way. And just so you kind of know how we're going about things here, there's that. The front of the car is right here. We're on the passenger side. We're going in through here where the big pulley is here. Belt. Took off the belt. I already did that. I put that on a separate video to try and shorten these videos up a little bit, because I already know this one's going to be long. Next, right there, there's your axle right there. Right there is the alternator right there. That is where we're going to be working on most everything, is through this hole right here. So, first thing we're going to do is detach this plug right here. If I can get my arm in there to hold it. There we go. And there's a little clip down here. Hopefully you can see where my finger is, right down here. Right there. And underneath this big section of it here, there's like a little one. Stick your thumb on there, pull down. Careful you don't yank it completely out. And then I got to figure this clip out here. I haven't quite got how this goes. I think it just pulls off, actually. it's just kind of around like a bolt, the end of a bolt. There we go. Yep. And it just kind of hooks into that bolt right there. And then this definitely has a clip. It says just to get it out of the way. So for right now, I may just actually just leave it right there just to see what happens. I think there's supposed to be another, yeah, there's supposed to be another one in the bottom of the alternator down here, but that one's already popped out, so I'm not worried about that one. And then we got two 13 millimeters, one here on the bottom of the alternator, right where my finger is wiggling at. There's one there, and one directly across from it over on that, on the other side, right over that way. There's also on the V6, which this is the V6, one up here somewhere, which I can feel it, but I can't really see it. It's kind of kitty corner straight up towards the top, that direction. And you're going to want to come around here, reach up. You can get it, I can feel it up here. So they're all 13 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and pop those off. And right here I'm going to stop and tell you I'll take that axle out before you try any of the stuff I'm about to do. Because that axle, had I took it out first, would have made a lot easier job out of this. So take that axle out first. Oop, and it just fell. I have a ratchet with a fairly short extension on it right there, and that seems to be the ticket to getting these out. I can get to the back one as well. I'm having trouble getting to that one though, but I think if I remove this front one I'll be able to get my hand down in there better. So anyway, that's what I'm using to pop these loose a little bit easier. And this curved handle wrench here with an extension on it, and I went to a 1/2 inch socket because the 13 millimeter actually kind of started stripping this one down here on the bottom. But this is what I'm using. I will show you this wrench to you. It's the one I used in my Ford Explorer one when I did the good, bad, and ugly on the spark plugs. And this wrench has become my new favorite socket wrench of all time because it just gets some places and maneuvers where it's almost impossible to do any other wrench. So yet again, at the end of this one I will show you the wrench. Just need to know that I have that wrench with an extension and a half inch socket for this upper bolt that's up here, and I will show you that and where that goes when I pull the alternator out. You'll see kind of where it is on the alternator. And on the bottom furthest one in, here's this wrench again, and you can see why, you can see, I don't know if you can actually, how much that maneuvers, and it goes right around this right here and allows me to get a click or two on the wrench. And as you can see, there it is right there, just sitting down there. I'm going to take a break or 10 and come back and work on it a little bit later. That is one of the secrets to working on cars. If you have the time and are able to do it, take a break in between things before you get super frustrated and wear yourself out, and then you start breaking things and everything goes bad. If you're frustrated and upset, it just makes it 10 times harder to get something out. Here's the bolts. There was 3 of them that size, so you know, compared to a hand, there you go. They are 1/2 inch, 13 millimeter probably, or 1/2 inch, either one really. They're basically interchangeable. Anyway, so I went with 1/2 inch to actually get them out because it did seem like 13 millimeter was a little bit looser. Anyhow, so we're out. We're gonna go take a break, and it really wasn't all that hard. What can you see? There's a plug there and the one there that's got a boot on it. And let's see if I can just use my thumb and push on this and pull this out. The same spot. Just keep reminding yourself where this boot is, where the axle is kind of where I'm working through most of the time, where the actual steering mechanism, I don't tie rod, and goes through is the other part where I'm putting my hand through on behind here. So right now I just got a screwdriver, I'm pushing on that and kind of prying it out. We'll see if that helps. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's how this goes, but I hate these kind of clip things. I always wind up breaking something trying to get them to come out. Yep. In fact, that one did break. I poked a hole in it. That's crazy. Alright, let's see if I can get my hand through. Well, I'm going to keep messing with that. If I figure out a trick, I'll tell you. If not, just got to mess with it till you get it. Able to coax that plug off there. I just got to work it kind of side to side till it came off. I'm kind of actually thinking it might be attached to the one I'm taking off right now. This is, I took the boot off right here. Took the boot off. I got a 10mm and a small socket or wrench here, and just pulling that off of there. And I think maybe if I would have pulled this off first, that other one might even came off a little bit easier. And yes, for those of you eagle-eyed people that want to tell me, I know I have an oil leak coming from somewhere. I don't know. I've been looking for it, but I'm not seeing it. Everything I own has a little bit of an oil leak. That's how I can afford to own them. Alright, that should, in theory, pull that off of there, but it sure is on there pretty good. Ah, everything's in my way here. This is the dumbest place to put a stinking part that you inevitably will have to replace in the lifetime of the car. But that's why they make disposable cars these days. There we go, I got that off. I do believe, for all intents and purposes, that those two wires there, the one plug and the one wire that was connected there, is all that is hooked to this thing. So I'm going to actually pull these over and out of my way a little bit here. Now, according to a lot of things, I can bring this up and through the top. So I'm now going to move this back bracket. I actually have been spending a while up top trying to fish this thing up through there, and I'd have to remove all kinds of things, I think, to fish it up through there, and that's still a maybe. So my next step is I'm going to take this bracket off. I think either way it would help and it would get it out of my way. The only problem is I can't get a socket wrench on there. Here's a regular wrench, and let's see, make sure I'm not tightening it. I'm not. So since I can't get that, we're going to do the old double wrench method. I got gloves on for when everything breaks loose and I crack my knuckles on something. Okay. And then there's another bolt directly straight up from this one. And there was actually 3 bolts. One was straight across. I'll show it to you. But to get this out of here, you got to bring the bottom towards you and fandangle it out. And I'll give you a better look at this. There's a look at the bracket there. Now when it was in the car, it was facing like this, so that's the top, there's the bottom, and then that's the holes, those 2 holes there, and that hole right there is where the bolts go through for the alternator. And then so there's a bolt on the back there, a bolt here, and one right down in there. For this one and this one, I used a regular ratchet with a 10mm socket on it. And for this one, I had to do, I showed you the two wrenches together and got that loose. Now I will say there was barely enough room to get this out past the axle. There was a hump in the axle. So here's where the bracket was, right there. So if you don't have this hump right here, right there in the axle, and it's on one of these higher spots right here and here, so there's like probably what, 4 humps and 4 higher spots. You need to be able to get it down in there or it's not going to come out. In that case, you either need to put it in neutral and try and turn your axle, but you got to remember, if you got it up on jack stands and stuff, that's going to be a pain. I got lucky and it was there already. So if you're having a problem, that could be it. Like I said, I do believe, in all actuality, I probably am still going to have to do it, but this was the first thing they said to take out, was actually the axle in the book. So far I haven't had to take it out. I'm waiting, because once you take this out from the center section, I would call it the pumpkin in a normal one, but I don't know exactly what that is. Anyway, that center section, it will leak some oils out. So that'll have to be replaced. So that's kind of why I'm trying to just not do that. I don't want to mess with that. So we'll see what happens. I have a feeling I'm probably going to have to, but I'm waiting until the absolute last second to do it, that I have to do it. Well, YouTube, unfortunately right here I was going to kind of cut and tell you to go watch my separate axle video on how I pulled the axle out of this thing. Well, unfortunately, I lost that footage. Since YouTube changed all their editing stuff to where you can't use their stuff, I am still trying to figure out the stuff that I'm using now. And I'm just using a free program, so that's probably part of it too. But anyway, I lost the footage. I have a little piece of it that I'm going to stick in after this, showing you me kind of jack up the hub, or basically, and try and take the lower A-arm out, and that's pretty close to what I did. I banged on it with a hammer for a while, and then finally I took a crowbar and reefed down on it and actually banged on the end of the crowbar, and that actually popped it out the rest of the way. That was probably one of the more difficult parts of this, although, you know, if you're a little beefier than me, maybe you can manhandle it, but I finally got it. And then pulling the axle out of the hub, you had to pull the hub out as far as you could and just kind of pull on it. It's going to bend a little bit more than maybe your book says you should, or, you know, it was more than I really wanted to, but it didn't hurt anything. The car is actually driving down the road fine right now. That's why I'm filming this from here. And I apologize for losing that footage. It's unfortunate because, you know, there was a lot of good footage and a complete video I basically lost. The other thing, I don't know if I show it. It might be somewhere in the Alternator video here, but there's 2 bolts on the inside towards the transaxle that hook that you just undo the 2. I think they're, honestly I can't remember if they're 1/2 inch or 10 millimeter, one or the other, or 13 millimeter, whatever you want to use. But anyways, there's just 2 bolts right on that, right into a bracket that's kind of hooked to the transaxle. You undo those and that whole thing pops out, which is where I'm going to be coming back into this video from. So that's where this will start. You'll see me just pulling that out. I apologize once again for the screw up. Hopefully you can bear with me until I get all this stuff figured out. This is definitely one of those things where I say, if you do anything I do and you hurt yourself or hurt your rig or hurt anybody else, I'm not responsible. If you don't like the way I'm doing it, don't do it. Hopefully you can see this. Let me take some of the light away here. See how. What I have here is a jack right here with a block on it. I got my rotor cinched down with the lug nuts here, so it's tight. And I'm slightly putting pressure on this. It's still on the jack stands. I got another jack stand underneath it, hopefully for safety. I'm keeping my butt out from underneath it. I also have a small punch or chisel, kind of. It's kind of a dull chisel that I've gone into the middle where the bolt cinches down in this lower arm here, and I have started pounding down here. This will probably pop out. It's done. I've done it a few times. It's starting to come now, though. I don't even know what size this is, but it's just a dead blow hammer. It's all beat up, and I'm just smacking on it. And it seems to be coming, but I am a little leery of this, even myself. Yeah, there it goes. This is definitely not how they say to do it. They say to put a pry bar in here, and you should be able to just pry on this and it'll pop loose. Well, it doesn't. And I'm even in a good spot now, and I still can't get it, but this seems to be working. Might not be able to see a whole lot, but once I go, I probably won't be able to stop. Holy mackerel. It's much longer than I thought it was going to be. Doggone it. Well, I'm pretty much losing all my fluids. We'll definitely be having to do fluids. Whoever said this should come out through here, and you suck, Ford. Well, I've taken a bit of a break again here. Okay. Just hear it draining. I wonder if I lift this thing up some, if it'll. And that helped stop the draining. Oh, wish I would have thought of that sooner. Because definitely going to have to replace some of the fluids here. But now I can at least maybe slow down a little bit, figure this out, take a break without having to put that thing back in. Okay, so definitely if it's draining, be ready to kind of lift the side of the car up. Once again, you're responsible for your own safety. Yeah, I figured I'd give you a little bit different angle to look from. You probably won't be able to see a whole lot because I put my hand through this part to kind of maneuver this around. I wish, hoping I can tell you how to do this at some point, but oh, there we go. It popped out. Now that it's out, I can kind of show you obviously where the bolts go. You got here, here, and here. It sits in the car just this way, and the bolts go in like that. Well, it's probably a little over a week later. I got all my parts and stuff like that, and I gotta say I'm pleasantly surprised actually how quick they came. The belt, I got them both on Amazon, cheapest ones I could find, both belt and alternator together in a package deal. The belt came like within 2 days. The alternator was within 4 days. I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 days. But taking mine, yesterday was Christmas, so I got them this time of year fairly quickly. Now the belt came from J&D Tech out of, looks like Lexington, Kentucky, USA. And I don't have the paperwork for that. It tells me how much I spent on it. I don't know. My wife actually opened this up, so I don't know how much we spent on it. But altogether, this was less than $100 for both these things.
So compared to all the rest of the prices on Amazon, and definitely, I mean, I couldn't even get the alternator for $100 around here at a parts store. So there's that. But the alternator came from Simply Good Overstock. Looks like in Maine. No, McPherson, I think Kansas. Now I don't know if this is a remanufactured one, just straight from China, fake one, I don't know. But it did come with a dyno sheet on its performance. I couldn't tell you heads or tails whether that was good performance or not, because I really don't know enough about alternators. I know how the basics they work. Now, I did pull the pulley off of my alternator, which I wouldn't bother doing if I were you, because it didn't really help my situation any. But checking the size, the diameter of this is actually a little smaller around the edges. I do believe I could take something and measure, but if just by kind of eyeballing it, the actual grooves in here seem to be the same size diameter. It's just this part is a little bit wider from here to here. So, but also from here to here it's the same. So we're all good as far as size wise, and actually this seems a lot beefier than the one that came off of it that was in there originally. So far I'm actually fairly impressed with this. Both shipping, it looks identical from what I can see. All the plugs look the same. So I got to get the other one out now and make sure that everything is all the same on it. But for now, I'm happy. It came in this box, all packaged up inside this box, in another box all packaged up. So packaging was great as well. So very happy so far with this product. We'll see how long it lasts. And I can't remember if I said it, but the alternator was $70. Maybe there we go. Oh, it's so close. Actually thinking it actually fit in a little better that direction, going backwards first. There we go. All right, well, hopefully you saw that. Turn this straight up and down. Okay. This piece here with the 2 bolts is facing me, and it went straight up in there real easy like, actually. Alright, well, I'm going to set that there. I'm going to take a break. So I have my alternator now facing backwards here. You just got to kind of stick it up in there, and you can kind of turn it. Once you get it up in there, it's fairly easy to kind of turn all the directions. But anyhow, so I'm taking the nut off here, and I got the wires up here. There's the plug up here. I'm gonna probably plug it in first and then do the wires. Here's the other one that plugs into that blue plug that you had to take off right there at first. But I do have to lift this up into somewhat where I can get to it with the wires, so I don't know if you'll be able to see everything. I got it kind of resting just on the bolts that the axle bolts into here, so I'm not having to hold up all the weight, and hopefully this will all plug in. There we go. Heard the click, so luckily that means I didn't break the thing too much anyway. And then I should be able to pull this down. Just enough wire to get that on there. There we go. That's on there. And then I'm going to go ahead and tighten that up. I'm going to get the bracket up in there. Comes out the same way as it went in. I don't think you need to really watch me bolt the bracket all back together, and really not even bolt this together. So a couple things. Definitely get the alternator situated so it's sitting about where you're going to want it, and then set it to the side. Before you hook this up, the bracket that it goes on, I did that, but I'm glad I did, because I don't know as I would have got that turned around in there with that bracket in there near as easy. So you want to make sure you do that. Have the alternator pretty much where you want it, the direction you want it. Once you hooked up the wires, then put that bracket in there and hook it up. We're to a point now where I need to put the belt on it, and so I'm going to do that. And before I put this axle back in, I am going to make sure that this thing is working, because if for some reason I'm having a problem with it, now is the time to find out before I put everything else back together. Now I've plugged in, this is also plugged in and put where it needs to go. Everything's all hooked up where it needs to go, tightened up, ready to go. The next part would be to do the axle, but like I said, I'm gonna get the belt on here, which I have another video for the belt if I hadn't mentioned that already, so you have to go check that out. So I've taken my light, checked everything. I did notice to get the belt on, I actually from up here had to kind of kick the tensioner bar with my foot so I could get this upper belt on here better. So you might want to make sure that that's done. But now I have, and yes, the garage door is closed and I'm going to start my car, but I actually do have a hose that goes from my exhaust out the door. So, you know, obviously don't start your car in a closed garage. Anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and start this thing up and check and see if hopefully the alternator is charging. Let it run for a little bit. I have checked and make sure like all my wires and things are out from where any of the belts are going to be turning at, and so I don't have any problems. Made sure all my tools and things are out from underneath where I was working at, because I'm not finished down there, and it shouldn't be any problem. As long as you don't put it in gear, you definitely shouldn't have any problem as far as running this thing just to check the alternator. Now, from previous experience with working on this vehicle, anytime you undo the battery, you have to go through a starting procedure so it can relearn. That's one thing about what I'm about to do, is I can do everything up to you're supposed to drive it for 10 minutes. I'm going to have to shut the car off, obviously, before I take it for a 10-minute drive. So, yet again, a little warning here. This says it can adversely affect it if you don't do what they say. As far as your idle and stuff, but worst case scenario, I'll unhook the battery and redo it all over again, and it should fix itself. So if you're having an idle issue with one of these kind of cars, some of these newer cars, and you've unhooked the battery recently, you might make sure that whatever car you have maybe might have some sort of procedure for the computer to relearn itself. So little side tip there. Alright, well, the engine light, or the battery light, is not on the car. That's a good sign, but being as I was having intermittent issues, that might not mean a whole lot. So I'm going to see where we're at right now. And it did start after sitting for a couple weeks, so I'm pretty well positive it's not the battery, because otherwise the battery would have drained off. And according to this, it's charging at 14.5958, somewhere in there, which is good. So right now the alternator is working. Now I know at least if I have a problem later on, the alternator is working right now. If it starts doing the same thing as it was before, then I probably have a problem somewhere in the wiring. Well, everything's back together. That wasn't near as difficult to put back in. The hardest part was just getting that little nub on the end there of the ball joint to go up in the hole a little bit there to the right place, and I smacked it a couple times with a hammer and it popped right in. So I do think that this part here was the hardest part, but it wasn't horrible. Definitely take this out first, and this was not hard at all. A couple bolts. The hardest part was getting this out of here. Getting it back in wasn't that hard, but There's no way you're getting this out without taking that axle out, so you might as well do it right up front. A couple more things. Don't forget, before you put your tire on here, to button this all up here, your rut guard stuff. Also, if you did like what I did and moved all this stuff out of the way, make sure you get that all buttoned up. And here's the other kicker that kind of irritated me today. This is not a reusable nut, although that one is, because I went out and bought a new nut. And instead of a Castle nut and a 10-cent cotter pin that you have to replace every time, you got to go to Ford. First of all, couldn't find it in any of my local parts areas, and pay, well, he gave me a better deal, but we'll say around 20 bucks for that nut right there. And it's supposed to go to 214 foot-pounds. I'm not positive. You need to make sure on your own on that one. And my torque wrench only goes to like 150, so I'm going to get it there and then figure out the rest, I guess. But you need to figure that out for yourself or get the right torque wrench. Anyhow, I think we're all done with this thing. Don't reuse it. It says to get rid of it. It's not a reusable part, so you know, that's a safety thing. Don't get that cheap on something like that. Go buy a new one. Go to Ford. I'm not even give you the part number, because the one I had, they had to change the part number like 3 times or something, I guess, and so it'd probably be different by the time you do it. So anyhow, well, YouTube, I think that's about it. There's a couple things I would do differently now that I've done it. I would definitely, first of all, make sure to jack up the side of the car fairly high, and that way the oil doesn't run out when you undo the axle, or at least less oil will run out. Because I've had it out for a while now and I haven't drained any more. As soon as I jacked it up, it seems to be fine. Number 2, I would take the axle out first if you can manage that, because I noticed getting all the stuff back in, bolting it up and tightening everything down was much easier. You could probably use more regular wrenches that way. Although I would still use the other wrench, which... And here's a wrench right here. It's got the head on it, swivels, and it's got this bend right here. And that bend is amazing. Something about that is just right for all kinds of stuff. So anyway, this is just a Chinese, I think it says made in Taiwan, Taiwanese, something that my dad had in his stuff that he's had since as long as I can remember. It is solid metal, every bit of it, including this back here. Everything's metal on it. So whether or not you'll be able to find one like that without paying a ton of money for it nowadays, even if it is Taiwanese, I don't know. But highly recommend finding something like that. It really has helped me a lot. But beyond that, taking the axle out first, that wrench helps out. I don't remember what the other thing was I said it though, I'm pretty sure. It wasn't a horrible job. The worst part was taking that lower part of the, I can't even think of it, the lower arm off for the suspension there. That was the most difficult part, and I think just make sure you have everything chalked up really good. And I think actually if you were able to get on there, get it knocked out as far as you can, and then give it one really good push on there. If you're a little bit beefier than me, maybe it would be easier. But it definitely took a little bit of effort doing that. The rest of it was just a matter of figuring out what direction to turn it to make it all work in there. So it really wasn't super hard, so don't let me fumbling around and having some troubles here and there stop you from doing it, because now that you have a better idea, this is my first time. I watched a few other people on video, but none of them really showed once they were in there. It was just kind of like, here's where it is, here it is out kind of thing. There's probably other videos. I'm not saying I did the best video. I'm saying there's probably other videos that do show more. I just didn't see them. But for that right there, this was my first time, like I said, doing this. And then, like I always say, if I can do it, any of you out there can do it. Just take your time.
Oh, that's the other thing. Take a break every now and then. When you're getting frustrated, take a break. I know I said that before, but it's a big one, especially on bigger jobs like this that have frustration involved. No matter what you do, you're going to get frustrated doing this just because there's so many steps and so many things you got to tear apart. But I guarantee you, you take this into a place to have it done, and they're going to charge you like there's no tomorrow. And, you know, I don't know, but I would charge a lot to do this for somebody. So I do believe it's definitely worth the $100 in parts and my labor is what I have into it. And you're going to pay probably $200, if not more, in parts and then labor. So, but that's neither here nor there. You guys can do it. That's all I try and explain. And hopefully you enjoyed this. We're able to get what you could out of it. I still have yet to see how much of it I actually got filmed. Hopefully most of mine doesn't end up being here. You take this out and here it is. But I try not to do that. That's why you hear a lot of blah blah blahs in my comments. Kind of like what I'm doing now. But anyhow, this is Sam. Jack of all, master of none. You all have a good one.